Mikey Fischer, thank you for joining me on 20-Minute Leaders. This is great.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm a huge fan of yours as well. So thanks so much for inviting me on.
Thank you. So you're talking from campus, from Stanford right now, right?
I am holed up here for a little bit. It's been great kind of working. It's kind of like cloistering in while I finish the last bits of my thesis.
Right. So PhD at Stanford, you're focusing on law, artificial intelligence. You're writing a book about regulating artificial intelligence. Tell me about your path. What is this intersection of law and AI? Where does this come from?
Yeah, so it's a little bit, so I originally I love computer science, obviously. I've been doing it for a really long time. I did undergrad here at Stanford. Always been very involved in research and, learning about the newest things. And then sort of AI came along and I got involved with that. That was sort of right as I was starting my PhD. And so I realized quickly that this was going to be sort of a non-incremental thing that was coming. And so I sort of switched gears a little bit and started going into AI. My interest has always been around sort of democratizing technology. Mm-hmm. So thinking about technology is this great enabler, and how do we make it more accessible, and how do we use technology to also make it more accessible? So the thing that struck me as being a huge need is right now, programming languages are extremely difficult to use. C++ was interesting, Python, JavaScript, it's constantly getting easier and easier to program. Right. It's still very tricky to actually understand, to break down a problem, to learn the syntax, to learn how to debug something. All these things require, a year of expertise before you can even build sort of a program of some size. And this seemed ridiculous to me because I envisioned a world, my dream is a world in which, you could just talk to your computer and then it could develop the program for you. Why do I have to know how to tell it what to do in a programming language? Why can't it come a little bit closer to me? And I can say, if Bitcoin goes below $7,000, order 2 more. And I could build a program that can do that, but I probably won't do it because it's too tricky to do. But it would be nice if I could just be telling my computer all the time these different programs that I would like, and it could then build them for me. So I looked into, my research is on sort of what is the next generation of programming languages going to look like? And my vision is that it'll encompass a lot more natural language. So you'll describe to the computer in not totally bizarre terms, but in something that it can understand. And then it can then use a translation sort of in a very similar way in how English is translated into Spanish by Google. How can you translate English into a programming language like a very simple JavaScript or a very simple Python that's sort of based around these sort of trigger action commands that people typically want to do?
So you're literally doing a thesis, you're doing a PhD at Stanford about what is the next generation of human-computer interaction going to look like, but from a development perspective. So not necessarily the consumer, Alexa, buy me more toilet paper. It's more, I want to think of a new Alexa and I want to talk my computer through working it out.
Exactly. Or demonstrate. Another one is we're working on is demonstration. So I just want to maybe show my computer what to do. Click this button, but only click this next button if the price of hand sanitizer is below $10. And if it's not, then do this. So you're sort of these next generation programming systems that allow either natural language or multimodal interfaces or programming by demonstration to allow you to build these sorts of programs that will run on, if I say Alexa, it'll pop up, and there it goes. It'll allow these next generation systems to run on these virtual assistant type devices.
Interesting. And so, Mikey, you're writing a book called Regulating AI. What is that about?
Yeah, so always been interested in AI, and as I was doing more and more of it, the social implications became more and more pronounced. And especially being at Stanford is all about the intersection between technology and society for a lot of things. It's not, I mean, there's other schools that are very technology focused. There's other schools that are very human focused, but I think Stanford is one of the things that sort of brings those two things together.
Sure.
And so, I mean, that's always been top of mind to me. And I took a class a couple years ago on regulating AI. I did well in it. And then the next time it was taught, the professor asked me to be the TA for it. And of course, I was extremely excited because this professor is a California Supreme Court justice. So he knows the law backwards and forwards. And he's been thinking about law and AI. And this class got me thinking about it a lot. And then being a TA for it also got me thinking about, you know, we obviously want AI. We need AI out there, but we need more clear understanding for both sides, from society's perspective, from the people who are building it. Nobody wants to release a self-driving car if they're not sure how it's going to be penalized when something bad happens. They want some clear. It's helpful for both sides to have some clear regulatory framework so that the law always finds a framework. I mean, it's just not clear before. If you want to make it clear before it happens as opposed to after it happens. I mean, someone will sue someone else, and some judge somewhere will review the case and come up with a ruling on it. It's just very inconsistent or haphazard. So it's better to maybe think about it a little, and not so much that you think about it so much that it makes so many rules around it that you stifle innovation, because that's bad as well. But just so that there's some framework around it. So I've been thinking about these ideas a lot. I'd been TAing the class. And so I thought it would be great to get these ideas out there more. And I thought even when I was doing the class, I tried to disseminate the knowledge as much as possible by opening it up to auditors, people could just sign up on it. We had an email list where you could stay up to date with the class announcements and the reading material, very trying to MOOC the course, just sort of ad hoc. And so that's good. And so then I thought it would be great to write a book, and the law is so interesting. So Shreyas and Pranab and myself are writing this book. And what we're doing is we're thinking about it in terms of a primer for people who want to learn about law, and also a primer for people who want to learn about AI. So then we're sort of taking different concepts and then tying them together. So we're looking at self-driving cars, and then we're tying that together with product liability and tort law. So we'll give a primer in what is a self-driving car, how does computer vision work, how does path planning work, and then tying that together with product liability and tort law in these interesting areas of law. We're looking at generative AI. So how does AI produce ideas and trademark things that can be trademarked, or words that can be copyrighted, or things like that, and then tying that together with patent law and copyrights and property law, sort of those things, and giving a primer to both, and then merging them together.
So Mikey, I want to pick your brain on this. So I recently saw this wide study about the trolley problem, where they presented in many countries this question of these various scenarios of the trolley problem. I'm sure you're aware of the study, where millions of respondents said whether they would have an autonomous vehicle go one way or the other, let's say, and a grandmother or a baby, right?
Yes.
And what was very surprising was that different countries had different responses to this based on their cultures. And I always thought to myself, what are the implications of this in terms of the law? And how are different countries going to regulate sort of AI in their own sphere? And what happens when one country develops technology that another country uses? Do you have some idea behind these things?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of countries, I think Singapore, I mean, it also, all these things are cultural too. So
yeah, definitely.
Singapore is just a smaller place. It has fewer roads. There's not any rural roads in which, everything's well maintained. The dividers are all well painted. Things probably aren't. It's all very urban.
Yeah.
Whereas the United States is just, we have super urban areas like New York, San Francisco, LA. We have suburban areas where it works, and urban is really, really hard just because there's so much interlap of everything and people. And then suburban's fairly easy, and then rural is just actually super helpful, because if you could just drive somewhere. And so all these things, I don't know that there is one sort of overarching thing, because all this law is a lot entwined a lot with cultural norms and how what it's going to be used for, and but there's certainly some places are further ahead, and even some states are further ahead, like Arizona and Texas are doing a lot and I think Nevada, California is too. And they're doing it in actually a pretty smart way. They're doing staged rollouts in certain areas with safety drivers, which is beneficial. I mean, it doesn't work. So we saw in the Uber case where there was a safety driver, but they weren't paying attention,
Sure.
and someone ended up dying. But it's still, I mean, if I had to say what they should do, is they need to have, like, I think the safety driver is a wonderful idea, and then they just need to set up some sort of metric around when their errors per mile is less than what you'd expect for a human driver. And one sort of, like, right now the discussion is always around, like, oh, the Google AI car made, you know, X number of errors, but then if you look at it, it's like much less than what a human would make. And it's just, in absolute terms, yes, it is bad, but so many people are distracted with driving, and you know, a lot of the mistakes, most of the mistakes that car accidents happen are a result of user error. And we're still coming to terms with, like, is it okay? Like, is it okay when a human hurts somebody? We have a way of dealing with it, but when a computer does, people are still very on edge about that, and rightfully so, because people are worried about sort of a dystopic future, but there's still
Definitely. So, Mikey, you were also a pretty big advocate for Andrew Yang, and you got to both meet him and advocate for him on campus. Tell me a little bit about how this comes into play with your love for technology and innovation moving forward.
Yeah, well, the thing that excited me about Andrew Yang was he was the first politician that was really pushing the idea of technology being an enabler in government. Right now, I don't think the U.S. is doing nearly enough. We're so behind in so many areas. We should be doing things with electronic voting, with cryptocurrencies, with, you know, digital assets, laws that are all digital, and we're not doing any of this. And it's a disaster because other countries are doing it and we're being left behind. And so Andrew Yang was the first one that said, look, I'm a politician and I'm in technology. And to me, that was enough. That said, okay, this guy is really interesting and I want to learn more about him. I had dinner with him in San Francisco many months ago. And after that, I was like, oh, I need to be doing more to help. At least, even if he's not going to get elected, I need to do more to just start getting these ideas out there. And so his main thing was this idea of universal basic income, which I think is a great idea. It basically gives everyone X number of dollars a month. I think there could be some issues. He was giving it to everybody, but when I was talking with voters and everything, people that were the idea that someone who's already making $1 million a year would be getting UBI, $1,000 a month, really upset a lot of people. So I think there's some areas where it needs to adapt that to maybe make it slightly more so that people are only making some certain threshold, something maybe more similar to what we're seeing with the payment protection program, where it's tiered based on how much money you're making. But the idea that automation is taking away jobs and we need some sort of safety net to keep people from becoming impoverished is a wonderful idea, which I really support. And so he was pushing that, and I started the Stanford Yang Gang on campus. So we flyer, we do chalking on campus. We had talks about universal basic income. We got out, I was the representative for the remote Iowa caucus here. So we tried to get people to caucus for Andrew Yang in Stanford. So it's been a great experience, and it's also been a wonderful experience to make Stanford campus a little bit more political. I think a lot of people here are, for the most part, apathetic. So getting some of the, especially that we had a lot of people who were computer science people, and also a broad spectrum, but we don't typically expect to see people who are in computer science doing it.
Definitely. So, you know, right before we started this show, we had a really interesting conversation about education and technology in general, and I think that we shared some of the different confusion about where is this going and what would happen, you know, if future generations would use methods like we have in these weeks with Corona times. And tell me a little bit about, how do you see this education through technology? What are its shortfalls? What are the good upsides to it?
Yeah, well, I mean, anytime you go to class, classrooms hasn't changed for 2000 forever. Like, I don't think anyone would argue that having a professor give a PowerPoint presentation at the front of the room is the optimal way for students to learn. Like, most of the people, you need more interactivity. You need the content needs to be way more engaging. PowerPoints, it's like going to see a high school play versus a Hollywood theater, a Hollywood production. It's just like when you add production value to things, it makes it more interesting. And like you look
Definitely.
at things online, like 3 blue, 1 brown, and the content quality is just so much higher than what you'd normally see in a classroom.
Like I'm thinking
So
master class, if you know that. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like the quality of the content is, and it's engaging. Like they've thought about it. There's a storyline around it. It's interesting.
yeah,
And so at Stanford, I think like there's something there for the online. There's going to be 2 camps. There's going to be people who keep going the way it's normally been going, but then there's going to be the other camp that embraces this change and says, okay, now how do we really think about what's going to change? Like how do we make the content even more engaging and more interesting and make
definitely.
people want to learn as opposed to. But I think there's also, as we were talking about earlier, like there's something missing with like no one is feeling it. No one is feeling excited about Zoom
Well,
classes.
Mikey, I think what you mentioned before, which really touched me, was, classrooms are meant for us to go and meet people and interact with our friends, interact with the professor. They're not meant to sit down in the wooden chair and just stare at a screen, not doing anything.
Yeah.
And my computer science classes right now, I feel like I'm learning just as much as I was in the classroom because it's a lecture based. But then there are the classes which are about the interaction and about going to the professor after class and getting their input and getting her and pinging questions back and forth with her, which is not really
Yeah.
the same in Zoom, right?
Yeah. I mean, so more interactive, more group projects, more like experiential learning, as
Definitely.
opposed to just taking notes online,
Right.
and just more interactive. Yeah. So
Yeah, I
and
mean,
also like
I'm looking at, augmented reality into this. And obviously, I really, and I told you, I really hope that future generations that they're not going to experience exactly what we're experiencing now, because it's just not enough as far
yeah,
as they see it. And it doesn't make sense to me that we have so much amazing technology that we could be leveraging for augmented interaction virtually that we're putting to other uses. I'm a little bit surprised that this is the best we can come up with. Uh, Although granted, nobody really expected that the whole world will transition to online education within a matter of a week.
yeah. I mean, I'm so optimistic for the future. There's gonna be such incredible things built out of this time. Like
Yes,
there's like this is just the start of a huge opportunity in which there's going to be like incredible classes online, incredible
definitely.
changes in healthcare, incredible change. Like sometimes you need
Yes.
that deadline to really kick. It's like a deadline for a paper. Like but until like it's due on April 1st, does things actually come
Yeah.
to fruition?
Think of, like, digital healthcare. All of a sudden, almost everybody has to be able to get their prescription medicine online.
Yeah,
That's not
exactly.
that's not going to go back to normal afterwards. Uh,
Yeah,
Incredible.
I'm super curious about what are the lasting changes that are going to come out of this and what parts are going to go back to normal.
Give
Because
me
I think
one guess for one lasting change that will stay afterwards.
I would say Zoom call, like work from home, could be much more the norm than it normally would have been before. I think
Yeah.
there's going to be, unless someone has a strong need to, like unless you need a haircut or something similar, like most people are going to do work from home, and to build on that, there's going to be a lot more tools developed to make this sort of
Yes.
more interactive around it.
Definitely. No, I think right now when you apply for jobs, a lot of the times you look at the locations and you think, do I want to work in San Francisco or Austin or Denver? And it might not really matter soon, because you're gonna have so many more opportunities, especially in the tech world, to work at any company you want, because they will at least enable you to work from home
Yeah,
because of this experience.
yeah,
Definitely.
interesting.
Mikey, before we
Yes,
finish, I want to put you on the spot one last time, and I want you to tell
of
me
course.
3 words that you think would best describe you.
Good question. Let me think. I would say fearless, because I don't think once if you are afraid of something, you don't go for it like you would otherwise.
Sure.
Um, Judicious, so thinking
Okay.
things all the way through, um, and thinking weighing the different sides of an argument, and
So far,
um,
sounds exactly like a PhD candidate at Stanford.
and I would say another one would be now. So there's this quote I like. It's like, And along with now would be pithy. These are sort of similar things, pithy or now. Now, because there's this quote I like, it's like, if not now, when? And I feel like that's an important thing. It's like, if we're not going to do it, like, there's so many things that can always take your time. But
Sure.
like, what are the most important things? So like now would be, of course, there's times to wait for certain things with exceptions, but with now is like an important thing. So if we're not going to do it now, when?
I love it. Mikey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Namaste. Thank you, Michael.
Namaste.
Bye.
Take care.